The dim light of the living room flickered as her father and stepmother sat across from each other, the tension thick in the air. Their voices were low, but you could hear every word from where you stood in the kitchen, washing the last of the dishes. The company is failing, and if we don't marry our daughter to John Group's son, we'll lose everything. I can't let that happen. Your father's voice cracked slightly with desperation. And you think marrying Rita off to him is going to fix everything? Your stepmother's tone was equally strained, but you could hear the resignation beneath it. We both know what kind of man John Jungkook is. He is spoiled, arrogant, and has a temper that could break anything in his path. You felt a knot form in your stomach as the words echoed in your mind. John Jungkook, the name itself sent a shiver down your spine. You knew who he was. Everyone in the city knew who he was. The heir to John Group, the Mafia prince who ruled with a cold fist, indulging in a life of luxury and violence. But he wasn't the real problem. The problem was what your parents were willing to sacrifice to save their own skin. Well, your father muttered, running a hand through his graying hair, we don't have a choice. We need this, the business will thrive, and we won't be left on the streets. I can't marry him, Dad. Rita's voice broke through the conversation like a sharp knife. You could hear her stand up, her high heels clicking against the floor as she crossed the room in frustration. He's a spoiled brat. I don't care if he's rich or has a temper. I can't marry a man like that. He's always drunk, always depending on his father's money. It's pathetic. There was silence after Rita's outburst. You could almost feel the heaviness of the room pressing down on you. The weight of everything, your family's expectations, the desperate situation they were in was suffocating. With your head down, you entered the living room, trying to escape the conversation and the tension. You had just finished cleaning up after the dinner and were about to head back to your room to escape the stress. But then your father's voice stopped you in your tracks. Wait, he said, his tone laced with a strange urgency. You married John Jungkook? You froze for a moment. Everything went quiet around you. You couldn't even hear your heartbeat, only the sound of your own breath as your father's words sank in. What? You asked, your voice barely a whisper. You heard me. He continued, his eyes flicking to Rita and then back to you. You will marry John Jungkook. You will save us. You shook your head, your chest tightening. No, I won't. Just like Rita said, he's dangerous, Dad. He's always drunk. He's always out of control. I don't want to live that way. But Rita, standing there with a cruel smirk on her face, added with a sneer, what's the big deal? It's not like you're gonna have a choice, right? You're nothing more than a crippled girl. A man like John Jungkook will be more than enough for you. After all, it's not like anyone else would have you. Her words hit you like a punch to the gut. The sting of her cruelty left you breathless, but you refused to let her see you crumble. A crippled girl, that's what they thought of you. That's what you had become in their eyes. And no matter how much you hated it, it was true. Your leg mangled in an accident while trying to save Rita from being run over on the road. The memory of that night still haunted you, the screeching tires, the thud of your body slamming to the ground. The coldness that had spread through your entire being when you realized you couldn't feel your leg anymore. You were left with a permanent reminder of that sacrifice, a prosthetic leg, something you would never get used to, no matter how many years passed, and now here you were, a constant reminder of your family's indifference. With a shaky breath, you looked at Rita. I lost my leg for you, remember? You whispered the words, tasting bitter in your mouth. I gave up my body, my future, for you to walk free. Rita's eyes narrowed and she opened her mouth to shout back, but your father cut her off, his voice louder and sterner than you had ever heard before. Enough. He stood up, his hand slamming onto the table. This isn't about you, Ryan. This is about the company. If you don't marry him, we will lose everything. This house, the business, all of it. You want us on the streets? Is that what you want? You could see the tears welling up in your father's eyes as he spoke, the desperation in his tone, as he pleaded for you to understand. Please, show some gratitude for everything we have done for you. You owe us this. The words cut through like a knife. Gratitude for what? For raising you only to throw you away when it was convenient? You felt your heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. Fine, you finally said, your voice hoarse. I'll do it. I'll marry him, but don't ever ask me for anything again after this. Rita laughed bitterly, her eyes filled with cold amusement. Good luck. You will need it. You're going to live in the hell. The tears that you had held back for so long now threatened to fall, but you swallowed them down. Hell, you had already been living in it. This was the just final nail in the coffin. Without another word, you turned on your heel and walked away, the sound of your prosthetic leg clicking against the floor, the only noise that followed you to your room. And as you closed the door behind you, you whispered to yourself, I'll escape this, and I have to. The day of the wedding was a blur of emotions, an overwhelming mix of fear, resignation, and a deep sense of betrayal. The grand hall was filled with people, their hushed whispers swirling around you as you stood at the altar, trying to keep your balance in the hills that felt like weights dragging you down. You were dressed in white, but it felt more like a shroud than a gown, draped over a body that had already been sacrificed for this moment. Your father and stepmother stood to one side, their smiles fake but carefully calculated. Rita, of course, looked like she was enjoying the drama, the cold smirk on her face barely concealed behind the glittering veil. She couldn't wait for this day to be over, for you to be nothing more than a pawn in her twisted game. Then the door to the church opened, and a low murmur spread through the guests. All eyes turned towards the entrance as Jungkook entered. His disheveled appearance, a stark contrast to the sleek polished guests around him. He was holding a glass of whiskey in one hand, the amber liquid swirling as he walked. He looked like a man who had no care in the world, a dangerous glint in his eyes, that massive confident swagger in his steps. You stood frozen, the reality of it all sinking in deeper. This was the man you were about to marry? The spoiled, arrogant, reckless heir to the John Group, the one your family had sold you to? As he approached, the whispers grew louder, the guests' eyes filled with curiosity and judgment. Some even dared to laugh under their breath, the word spoiled slipping out in hushed tones. Poor girl marrying a spoiled brat. You could feel every word like a slap to the face, the sting of their pit more painful than anything. Jungkook came closer, his eyes scanning you lazily, his lips curved into a slight smile, but there was no warmth in it, just a cold amusement. He glanced at you, raising an eyebrow. So, you are the bride? His voice was low, his tone was bored. You nodded, your stomach sinking. His eyes stayed on you, cold and assassin. Well, you are looking beautiful, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Why marry some spoiled brat like me? Before you could respond, Rita's mocking voice rang out. A crippled girl like her would be the perfect match for a spoiled brat like you. Her words hung in the air, cutting through the already thick tension in the room. Gasps filled the hall. The room seemed to freeze as everyone turned to look at her. Your heart pounded in your chest. A rush of anger and humiliation flooding your veins. You could feel every pair of eyes on you, waiting for you to react, but you kept your composure, fighting back the urge to scream at Rita. Jungkook, for the first time since he entered, looked at Rita. His gaze was sharp, cutting through her words like a knife. Crippled? He repeated, his voice dangerously soft now. You inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment heavy on your shoulders. Without looking away from Rita, you answered, Yes, I lost my leg for an ungrateful brat like her, and I regret every moment of it. Your voice cracked slightly as the words left your mouth, but you didn't care. They needed to hear it. Rita's eyes flared with anger, and she opened her mouth to shut back, but you didn't let her. Instead, you turned your gaze back to Jungkook, the words you had kept locked inside finally slipping out. I have been carrying this weight for years, my family's debt, my sacrifice for her. And I don't even get a thank you, just judgment. Rita's face turned crimson with rage, but she stayed silent. Her eyes burned with venom, but she knew better than to challenge you openly, not with Jungkook standing there. Your father's voice broke through the tense silence, his face red with embarrassment. We didn't know how to tell you about her disability. We were just trying to make it work. You see, this marriage will fix everything. Before your father could continue stuttering, Jungkook's voice cut through sharp and final. I don't care about it, he said, his tone suddenly cold. I will marry her. There was a beat of silence, the weight of his words settling over the room. Your father looked like he was about to protest, but one glance from Jungkook silenced him instantly. The gaze shifted uncomfortably and Rita's face twisted in disdain, but Jungkook ignored all of it. The priest, sensing the tension, cleared his throat and proceeded with the ceremony. Verbs were exchanged. Words that felt empty, hollow, like they didn't belong to you. The priest's voice blurred. As you stood there, numb, your thoughts spinning. You weren't even sure what you had promised anymore. But in the end, it didn't matter. The marriage was sealed. As the ceremony concluded, the guests began to scatter, murmuring amongst themselves. And then Rita, always the snake, slithered over to you, her lips curling into a mocking smile. Good luck, princess. You will need it living with a man like that, she taunted, her voice dripping with venom. You clenched your fist, but before you could respond, Jungkook's voice came from behind you, cold and commanding. Rita, he said, his voice low, you will talk to her with respect, or I'll make sure you don't walk for the rest of your life. The threat hung in the air like an unspoken promise. Rita's face balanced, and she took a quick step back, her eyes wide with fear. You wouldn't, she began, but Jungkook's expression was unwearing. He placed a hand on your shoulder, his touch unexpectedly gentle, guiding you away from the altar. As you walked down the aisle, away from the life you once knew, you felt his presence behind you, an anchor, a shadow you didn't fully understand yet. The weight of your decision had only just begun to sink in, and you couldn't help but wonder what kind of life awaited you with John Jungkook, the man who was now your husband, for better or for worse. Life in the mansion had settled into a strange rhythm. Jungkook had become more gentle with you, ensuring your prosthetic leg was always adjusted properly, helping you with the little things like getting in and out of the car, always making sure you didn't feel like an afterthought. A tenderness that you hadn't expected from the man you had married. He was a world away from the cold, angry figure that had first appeared at your wedding, but even as he showed you this unexpected hair, his temper was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. He was quick to anger when something didn't go his way, especially with his business, his girls, or anyone who dared to cross him. And you couldn't help but notice the way he handled it all. The drinking, the outbursts, it was as though these temperamental bursts were the only ways he knew to cope with the pressure of being the Mafia heir. He did it well most of the time, but you had started to see through the cracks. It was on a regular trip to the shopping district that you ran into Rita again. You were simply picking up a few things for yourself, trying to enjoy some normalcy. When you spotted her, she was standing outside a boutique, chatting loudly with her friends until her eyes caught yours. A cruel smile spread across her face. "Oh, look who it is," Rita sneered. "The crippled bride, still hanging on to your prince, I see. How is the spoiled brat treating you?" Her friend snickered, and your heart dropped. You would learn to ignore Rita's cruelty over the years, but it still stung every time she mocked you. It was as if you couldn't escape the remnants of your old life, no matter how hard you tried. Before you could say anything, you heard a cold, familiar voice behind you. "That's enough, Rita." You turned to find Jungkook standing there, his hands shoved in his pockets. His gaze sharp, his posture was relaxed, but there was something about the way he stood. Feet spread apart, shoulders squared, that made it clear he wasn't here to let her taunt you. Rita blinked, taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. "Oh, Jungkook," she said in a mock sweet voice, "just protecting your new pet, are we? How sweet." Her friends were looking between the two of you, unsure of what to do. Jungkook's eyes narrowed as Rita continued her tirade, but he didn't flinch. He stepped closer to you, placing a hand on your back. A small but deliberate gesture that made it clear you were not to be insulted by any longer. "You want to mock her?" Jungkook's voice was low, a warning, that kind of tone that made people hesitate or save your life. Rita's smile faltered, her bravado crumbling under his gaze. She was used to everyone fearing her, but now the power dynamic had shifted. She was no longer in control. "You can't seriously think." "I can, and I said I'll leave my wife out of it." Jungkook repeated, his voice is cold and final. There was a quiet intensity behind his words, something that shut Rita down completely. She looked at him, clearly realizing that he wasn't joking. He wasn't just the rich mafia heir anymore. In that moment, he was the man who would stand up for you. Jungkook's eyes flicked to Rita's friends, who were now standing uncomfortably, their smiles faltering. "If you don't want to be next, I suggest you walk away now." Rita, humiliated, shot you a glare before turning and walking off, muttering something under her breath. Her friends quickly followed her, casting furtive glances back at you and Jungkook as they disappeared into the crowd. You stood there for a moment, still processing what had just happened. Jungkook hadn't just protected you, he had shown Rita who was in charge. You didn't know whether to feel relieved or overwhelmed by the force of his presence. But there was something else, something more subtle in the way he had acted. It wasn't just about protecting you, it was the way he had taken control of the situation without a second thought. As the crowd began to thin, you turned to Jungkook. "Why do you always act like this, Jungkook?" You asked softly. "Why the temper? Why the anger? It's not just the business, is it?" His expression faltered, but only for a moment. His jaw tightened, and he glanced away as if debating whether to open up to you. "What do you mean?" he said, his voice stiff. "You act like a spoiled drunk man sometimes, then you explode at the smallest things. I don't understand. I thought you were different with me." You could feel the weight of the question hanging in the air between you two. Why do you have to hide behind the anger and the drinking? What is really going on? Jungkook's eyes softened, and for a brief moment you saw the vulnerability he kept hidden so well. He let out a quiet breath, the tension in his shoulders easing as he ran a hand through his hair. "It's not as simple as you think." You stepped closer, gently placing a hand on his arm. "I know it's not, but you don't have to hide it from me." You are not just the angry mafia here. You are a person, someone I want to understand. He looked at you for a long moment as if he were weighing his options. Finally he sighed, his shoulders slumping as he leaned back against the wall. Fine, you want the truth, he said, his voice quite almost resigned. I act this way because I want to see who is real, who will stick around even when I'm at my worst, who will care when I'm drunk, when I'm angry. It's the only way I know how to test people. You frowned, the realization hitting you hard. You have been testing me? You asked softly, your voice cracking just a little. Jungkook nodded. Yeah, I didn't want to let you know anyone in. Not with this life, not with the pressure of being who I am. But then I married you and you're different. You don't treat me like I'm just some mafia here. You see me, you see the parts of me that I hide from everyone else. Thank you for watching.